I am live. As always, I'll give it a few seconds until I see myself pop up over here. Wow, it's a new week, it's a new moon, it's a new day, and I'm here live. And two people are here, so Peace and Coffee is here. Sneezer says that he won't be in today. Okay, so here I am, I'm live. It's the Nazarite bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. Hello there, hi. So Sneezer was here earlier. He said won't be in today, but think of you all. Hugs. Well, that's nice. Most appreciated, Sneezer. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a good weekend, and if you're spending your Sunday in a positive way. Peace and Coffee is here. Shalom to you, indeed. Peace and Coffee says, a man who hasn't repented fears all things. Rabbi Nachman of Breslev. Rabbi Nachman had so many wonderful gems, so many really, really great quotes. And let's delve into that one a bit before I go to the chat and before I go to comments from today and a couple of days ago. A man who hasn't repented fears all things. So if we flip that around, we might say a man who has repented fears no things. In other words, has no fear but fear itself, right? Has no fear but fear of God. There is something to that, right? King Solomon says, Reshit Chochma Yirat Adonai, the beginning of wisdom is fear of God. And there's definitely a lot there. A man who hasn't repented, thank you. A man who hasn't repented fears all things. Hey, BMXers is in the house. Hey, BMXers. I enjoyed our little back and forth, and the back and forth you had with Ariel Marshall, which I will get into. I won't get into the one that you had, both of you, but what Ariel and I did have that you sort of commented on first, or foremost, I don't recall, but I'll get into that very soon. So yo, I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. A man who hasn't repented fears all things. Like I said, that the idea of repentance is twofold, right? Where on the one hand, you have so much grace and so much comfort and so much solace in knowing that you are now attempting truly and honestly to walk a righteous path. And on the other hand, you have that fear of all those things you still haven't done, things you still need to repent for. And, well, it also calls into question the nature of repentance, right? In Hebrew, it's tshuva, from lashuv, meaning to return. So repentance can be also seen as returning. Interestingly, in Hebrew, many times it's seen as tshuva, answer, where to live a secular life where you were once religious is called lachzor b'she'elah, to return with a question. And that's not precisely what tshuva is, but that's simply in the modern day vernacular how people perceive it. Since they are questioning faith, questioning religion, that's what they called it, to return with a question as opposed to tshuva, answer. So even though it's not originally, I think, the meaning of the word in that context, it's still interesting to see how language changes and evolves and gets into the, the modern day parlance, right? So let's see. I'm going to start with, it's now a month since I went back online almost daily, live streaming regularly. It's been a month. It's been 28 days. Hey, Es Yofi. Is it Yofe or Yofi? I am in Jerusalem. Where are you from? Do share with the group. So, all right. So it was a while since I broadcasted regularly, and I've done so for the past 28 days. So I'll hit you with just some analytics. In the past 28 days, the channel got just over 9,000 views, 9,047 views. The shorts were the bulk of these views, 58.5%. Live streams were 35.5%, and regular videos, either ones that I uploaded or ones that were uploaded, they got 6%. I had 295.5 watch hours in the last 28 days and 46 new subs, which is nice. I appreciate every single person who subs, who likes, who engages, who gives their opinion. I'm here to learn from you guys. The top content was a short called Pinky Speaks, where I was inviting people that day to come and join us in the chat. That got 1,920 views, probably because the thumbnail is a dog, right? Is the doggo I live with. As for watch time from subscribers, The people who did not subscribe, the watch time was 61.5%, and subscribers were 38.5%. So that's a really nice amount of watch time from those who are subscribed, and I genuinely appreciate it. As for how it skews with sex, 75% were male and 25% were female. And in the live streams, it went up a bit, where it was 65% male, 35% female in the live streams. As for who watches, as far as the ages are concerned, the bulk of those who watch are 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. So people between 25 and 44, usually male, those are the ones who are watching. I also have 0.6% of 13 to 17-year-olds. I have 10.4% people 65 and up, according to the analytics. And one final analytic before I go into the actual chat, where you're viewing from. So the United States, the US, is 27.4%, the UK 6.3%, Israel 5.8%, Greece 4.5%. I wonder who's watching in Greece, and South Africa, looking at you, BMXers, South Africa 2.7%. So that's just my quickie analytics for the recent month. It's been really, really great to be back online, and it's so much fun to be doing this. I don't know if I'll be doing it every single day, or 5 days a week, but it used to be every day, and then it went to Monday and Wednesday and Friday, and I don't know where it's going, but it's going somewhere, and I'm glad to be here, on this journey. It's a lot of fun. Let's see, a couple of things in the chat here. Peace and Coffee says, in regards to the Noahide laws, right, the 7 laws of the Noahides, why is it that, based on my studies, he says, why is it would seem Noahides, those who keep the 7 laws of Noah, why are they righteous, but the children of Israel are holy? Is it believed Noahides can't reach holy state? No, I think that, again, holy is sacred, set apart, consecrated. You can be holy when you engage in things that are holy. It all is a question of what is it that you set apart? What is it that you consider to be sacred that would make it de facto holy? And to be holy in a very strict sense, right, is to set yourself aside, set certain actions aside, be it what you think and be it what you say, how you behave, what you wear. These are things that make you holy by virtue of the way that you conduct yourself in the world. Now, is there any kind of metric? Is there any kind of actual metric to, this is holy, this is unholy? We have the Torah, right? We have the commandments that teach us what is holiness. Some people acquire it through their deeds and their actions and the way they comport, themselves. And other people are born into a type of holiness. Let's say priests, right, in the Hebrew faith, the tribe of Levi, which is seen as holy, as set apart, as consecrated, right, for a certain goal, for a certain purpose. And this is not to say that the rest of the children of Israel can't be holy. It simply means that there are different levels and nuances of holiness, of sacredness. Same thing in the different days and festivals, the Sabbaths, right? Some of them are holy and some of them are holier. Much like in the tabernacle, the temple, there was the holy and the holiest of holies. And in that same way, our bodies represent the temple. We represent the temple. The people of Israel and the nations represent different degrees of holiness. And the people of Israel are meant to be set apart, are meant to be holy. But this does not take away one iota of whatever a Gentile, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, right? Somebody who is not of the tribe of Israel, who's not of the tribes, doesn't mean that you can't be holy. You can definitely be holy insofar as you act in a holy and sacred way. And I think that's where that's the way I break it down. Now, the 7 laws of Noah and those who keep them, people say that they are righteous Noahides because they keep the rules. In the same way, a man or woman of the Hebrew tribes who keeps the Torah and its commandments is also considered righteous. So righteousness and holiness, they go together, but they are not the same thing. Okay, that? All good? Okay. They go, easy now. They go together, but they're not the very same thing. So why would it seem that Noahides are righteous? Because they keep the laws. They keep the rules. A person of Israel who keeps the rules and commandments of the Torah is also righteous by that logic, right? By that actual function in the world, right? You keep the laws, you are righteous. On the other hand, you could say, no, you are only righteous if you're also righteous in your heart. You could also do things very technical and disconnected from your heart, and you would be righteous technically speaking, but not metaphysically, not. So there's also that distinction. The people of Israel being holy, Noahides and Gentiles can reach a holy state in their way, much like the Israelites can reach it in their way. The priests, the Levites, the Nazarites can reach it in their way. It has to do with what is your job, what is it that you set apart, how is it that you set yourself apart, and do you act that out in the world? Do you fulfill that thing which you consider to be evident from your experience, your studies? Do you, guys? You know what I asked? Okay, so let's see. Let's continue here in the chat. No, peace and coffee. I don't know if I answered you. I don't know if I answered you. I don't. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Let's go. Let's read a couple of. Let's read Ariel Marshall earlier today or yesterday. I think it was today. Yes, he said, "Living out here in the mountains of Mallorca, I miss eating chillant and the Sephardi rice alternative. Also listening to people make machine gun noises and gesticulating while pretending to devoutly recite from their benching books." So he's talking here about the grace after meals. There is, well, I'll continue with what he said. He said, "It's not unusual for people to make an almost generic sound when doing this. Depends on their background also. Pretending might be misleading, but it comes across like this when people are praying in that kind of machine gun way, kind of on automatic pilot, right?" And he says, on a personal level, "I think I would be much more involved with Jews that practice all of these customs. I would certainly like it," he says, "I would certainly like it if I would like a wife with more traditional values, beliefs at this moment in time. And I have a lot of respect for people like this. But I do not feel," he says, "like I can justify the time that it takes when people desperately need my help in other ways. It's the old, do not stand idle when the blood of your neighbor is being spilled dilemma." So I spoke a bit to him about in the comments about that machine gun thing. Right, I told him I don't judge. There's definitely merit to it, especially in, let's say, a synagogue, a place of worship where it's a congregation, because a congregation can do things which an individual cannot, because what I lack, somebody else does not, and what I can do, somebody else can. And we come together as a congregation, and we're able to achieve that higher status as a collective, whereas the individual who is flawed and frail and has his faults won't necessarily be able to reach that very same thing. It's not a question of height or of, right, it's just that the public, right, the congregation, the collective can do things together, and in doing things as a group, you're able to reach things as a group. And with an individual, things might be more difficult, not impossible, but more difficult. And I told him, I know exactly what you mean about the machine gun noises. I never liked the buzzing. And I told him, I get it. It's something that never sat well with me. I would watch people in synagogue, in shul, or around the table, as he says in the Grace After Meals, simply going through the motions, or at least appearing, because I don't know, I'm not in their mind, appearing to go through the motions, making the, gesticulating and movement and the reading out of a book. And this is a problem. It's a problem, not because the book is a problem, but when you take prayer, which is also, not supposed to be, it's also meant to be a spontaneous call to the divine, a spontaneous call and dialogue with oneself and with the divine revelation as it's manifesting here and now. Our sages wrote down the different prayers in a book. More prayers were added, new ones, old ones, some were taken out, some were changed, some were tweaked. The idea of having a prayer book, what's called a sidur tefillah, right, in a certain order, has its origins and its roots in the tree of life, in the Kabbalistic teachings, and how you're supposed to go step by step when you pray, whether it's alone, whether it's with a group. Certain things you're not allowed to pray on your own. So there are certain prayers and there are certain activities, if you will, that you are allowed to engage in only with 10 adult male Jews above, right, who are of age, above the age of 13, and one day what's called bar mitzvah, right, where you are commanded to follow the commandments. And there's a reason for this, and the reason, again, is that you can do things as a group that you may not be able to do as easily or maybe at all as an individual. So there's a lot of merit to the group. On the other hand, when you have a congregation and a prayer is being led, you'll have a lot of people who are just going through the motions, and that never sat well with me, which is why I haven't used a prayer book to pray in a very, very long time. I don't judge. There's a lot of merit to it. I did it for years. I might do it in the future. I'm not poo-pooing it, and I'm not saying it has no place. For me personally, I understood what Ariel Marshall was saying. And he said this, he said, I think the thing is that the way the prayer service structure has been formulated has resulted in a very lengthy, robotic, almost tiring process. Knowing how much time to allocate to it has been a personal decision in my mind, according to personal circumstances, which is kind of what I'm saying as well. Still, out of respect to other people, he says, it is a process I am happy to take part in when and where appropriate. I agree. If I end up ever in a synagogue, in a shul, I will definitely be doing my own thing, but I will be answering, right, and doing the different amens and being part of the group and of the congregation, because it really does have so much strength, so much power. It's so useful, and I know its power, and that's why I'm not dispensing with it entirely. And I quoted the Mishnah, right, the oral teachings. It says in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 2, Mishnah 13, it says, and when you pray, do not make your prayer something automatic, but a plea for compassion before God. I've always loved that line. Well, the Ethics of Our Fathers have many great lines. So Ariel Marshall concluded and said, I do not know if you will agree with me, but personally I think it is beneficial for kids to learn from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible. Thinking about it can help us to learn from wiser people and fill in where we are lacking in our sensitivity. I spent most of my life, he said, gaining experience in other ways, which has its pros and cons, I guess. And this is also why I agree with him. I think you need to have time for learning and time for prayer, whether it's together, whether it's, well, not together, right, to give each its time and its place. And I am a great believer in the Bible, in the sense of that it's something it's a way forward, right, for us, definitely the Hebrew folks, and obviously others as well, to teach us mainly what not to do, not necessarily what to do, but mainly what not to do. As I've said many times, there is a river of blood and destruction and death running through the Bible, and we can try and avoid that by being better people, by learning from others who came before us and from their mistakes, maybe more than anything. To see history, and if you don't consider it actual de facto history, to see the what would it be? Well, the different patterns of Jewish, Hebrew, human existence, where we are faulty, where we could use help. What is it that we are tempted by? What is it that we should double down on? What should we have faith in, almost? Because there is no commandment to have faith. There's a commandment to, right, to be humble before God and to not have other gods and all that. But is it an actual commandment of the 613 to have faith? That is a machloket, that is a controversy. It's a difference of opinion, and people have definitely different opinions on that. The different teachers of Machshevet Israel, of Jewish philosophy, through the years have had a lot to say about the subject of faith and whether or not it's a commandment. Because you can technically perform all of the mitzvahs, all of the commandments that you can, right? Because some are for women, some are for kings, some are for priests, some are for Nazarites. So you can't do all 613, but you can act in such a way and perform your mitzvahs, your commandments in such a way where it's as if you fulfilled 613 commandments. Also, that idea of what I cannot do, somebody else can. And so coming together, we all fulfill the commandments as a nation of Israel, which is a very important thing. Let's go to the chat here before I continue. So hello, Taylor is here. Make Straight once again is here. Nice to see you. Okay, let's see. Oh, Craig Leese is also from South Africa. Okay, good memory. I completely forgot about that. Taylor says, what do you think of King Hoshea? Wait, is it King Josiah? Is it Hoshea? Or is it, because right, the English, the Hebrew, Yoshiyahu. Okay, so Yoshiyahu was Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu, the Bible itself said, was a king of the house of David. Nobody, no other king in the Bible repented the way he repented. I consider him to be truly an amazing king. Truly. Scholars think he influenced Deuteronomy. Yes, that's correct. Those people who think and who have the opinion, right, the theories that 4 or 5, I think it's 4 different authors authored the 5 books of Moses, do claim that during the time of King Yoshiyahu, there was this Well, that it was let's say, a clan of priests who added the importance of the priesthood, and it was King Hoshea who added the importance of the temple later on as king. For one, I read the book Who Wrote the Bible years ago, and I can see where they're coming from. I can see why there is this idea that different authors wrote the Bible, the different literary styles, the different things that are repeated, that are mirrored, things that you can tell from that different style or mirroring was written in this point in history rather than that point in history, and where it all comes together. I do believe the 5 books of Moses did come from Moses. Whether or not things were tweaked or changed, we know that this actually did happen, which is why I pick and choose everything. I'm a cherry picker. That's what I do. I cherry pick everything, and I choose to see the 5 books of Moses as a whole, but I have no problem at all with those who think that it was all man-made, that it's all crap, that it was individuals, kings, priests, and prophets who influenced the writing and who later brought it together, bound it, and called it something divine. I don't have a problem with that either. It's all, once again, a question of, and now what? Where does it meet me? Where does it meet me in the here and now? Right? What is it that I'm taking away from this book? You can call it sacred, you can call it profane, you can say it's the root of all good, and you can say it's the root of all evil. And people do that very thing. Shalom all, says Make Straight. Shalom to you, good to have you here. Taylor says, what do you think of Palestine deriving from Philistine? Palestine flag has the same 4 colors as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in the Christian book of Revelation. I did not know that. That's an interesting tidbit. Well, what do I think? I've addressed this before, right? The Philistines themselves were not part of the 7 nations that Israel were commanded to wipe out when they made their way to Canaan, to the Holy Land. And so they were, as we see in Judges, and afterwards a thorn in the Israelites' side for many, many years. Different judges contended with them, different warriors and people and tribes contended with them, but since they were not one of the nations that we were commanded to wipe out when we conquered the land, then they were there. And I believe, as I've said before, according to scholars and researchers, they have Grecian roots, right? So their origins are in the islands around Greece or Greece itself. I'm not sure. So as for Palestine deriving from Philistine, right? So Rome, and because that name was known earlier, but Rome, when it wanted to punish the kingdom of Judah and the Judean people, they called this place, right? They called Jerusalem Ilia Capitolina, and they called the kingdom of Judah Provincia Syria Palestina, the province of Syria, Assyria, and Palestine. Assyria coming from Assyria, right? Ashur, whose king Shalmaneser banished and exiled the 10 lost tribes, and Palestina, Plishtim, the Philistines, who were a thorn in the sides of Israel. So Rome, seeking to disconnect the people of Judah from this land and from their kingdom, they banished them, many of them anyway, and they renamed this place after 2 very great big enemies of the Israelite people. It's what they were trying to do. It's not. Yeah, no. I saw you said that Craig is also from South Africa. I said that already, yeah. So what do I think? I think that it's very apt, I suppose, that Palestinians is derived from Palestine, that Rome chose to do that. There's a reason, right? There's a reason. Many kings and conquerors did the same thing. They banished people, displaced them, renamed their cities and nation, right, and kingdoms differently to sever the connection between the people and their kings and their land and their traditions. That's a strategy that's very well known, and it was effective to some degree, but the Hebrew people have always called this place Jerusalem. It has 70 names according to the Bible, one of them being Jerusalem, right? Zion is another, where I am right now. So they were not successful. The Romans were not successful because the Roman Empire was, Rome was sacked, but we, the Hebrew people, are still here. You can argue over whether or not we were always here, and it's a very long debate, obviously, but it's definitely the land of Judea and the kingdom of Judah, and before the kingdom was split, it was the land of Israel, the kingdom of Israel, the whole one, right? Saul and David and Solomon before the kingdom was split. Taylor continues, do you think the Philistines of Genesis are a different set of Philistines than the Philistines in Judges through the book of Kings. I don't know, because I'm not a scholar, right? And I'm not an educated man, certainly not in history. So I have no idea. I think that, right, Pleshet, that's the origin, the name of the place, it's probably the very same place. It may not be the actual people genetically, historically, but it is. They do, I think, come from that very same place, Pleshet, from the north. And right, Ashur was also in the north. Assyria was also in the north. And those people, the Philistines, the Assyrians, were always at war. You can read it through the book of Judges and the book of Kings, as you said. So I think it's a different set? Possibly. Once again, I don't know, but the question is, and now what? If it is, what does that mean for me? If it isn't the same set, what does it mean for me? And I think what it represents is our enemy, right? The ones who are supposed to be there and keep us on our toes and make sure that we don't forget that we have a covenant. If the people of Israel ever forget their covenant, they get walloped by their enemies, by God, if you will, working through their enemies. And we know the different curses that are laid out in the 5 books of Moses. What happens when we keep the covenant? What happens when we do not keep the covenant? And all of those things pretty much came to pass. But whether or not it's actually the very same Philistines over there, then I wouldn't know. It makes some sense that it would be, but I wouldn't be able to know. BMXer says, no, about your American citizenship. I may have missed that. Hang on a second. I meant to ask you, says BMXers, how did you get American citizenship if you were born in and mostly lived in Israel? Through my parents, because my parents are U.S. citizens who lived there for a lot of their life. I mean, until they came to Israel, obviously. They were there for many, many years, and then they made Aliyah, then they ascended to the land of Israel, and because of that, I was able to get my citizenship as an American born abroad. I can also, as I've said, do the same things for my kids, and if I decide to do it, I probably will. I'm not sure about the logistics of it and how to get it done, whether I will have to take them to the States or not, probably, because I never lived there. I've gone there to visit, but I never had my center of life in the U.S., meaning I'll probably need to take them there to that branch of government that deals with that and get their citizenship there if I'm interested. Okay, let's continue. Mr. Pig said on Thursday, he said Sanskrit, right? We were talking about Sanskrit and the biblical Hebrew and Sanskrit and how it's considered a dead language because it's not actually spoken day to day. It's mostly reserved for the different religious rituals and rites and spiritual teachings and whatnot. So he says Sanskrit is speaking in tongues. Proper Sanskrit pronunciation, says Mr. Pig, has been lost for roughly 5,000 years. Fascinating that it has been lost, the proper pronunciation. And it brings to mind like the name of God. The people say it's the 72-letter name, which also the pronunciation is not lost, but people say that it is lost, but if it's not lost, it's being hidden away by those who do know. And he says, I've started converting to Judaism, a Kabbalist to be exact. I pray the 42 name prayer every day and every Sabbath. I also observe Sabbath, and I try to go to a synagogue every Saturday. That is lovely. I can definitely see why Kabbalah why people would want to convert in order to be Kabbalists. I definitely can understand that. I wonder if this is something that will actually come to pass, because it's a kind of like, you need to crawl before you walk sort of thing. And even though, like I said about the prayer book, the Siddur, even though it has Kabbalistic origins and everything is based on the tree of life, to immediately dive into it before having the, let's say, the ritual worship as we have now without the temple in place, at least from an Orthodox point of view, that might be problematic, because Kabbalah is receiving, and you need to build that vessel within yourself to know how to receive. And there are different ideas of why you should or should not study Kabbalah. For many, many, many years there was a kind of ban where you had to be 40 and you had to be married and you had to study tons of Torah beforehand in order to be, do you mind? I asked you, please. You know I asked you. Thank you. Right, where you had certain restrictions and certain restraints in place. Now, ever since the Ari in the 15th century, or well, the 16th century, ever since the time of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Ari, Kabbalah has been sort of opened wide, and it ought to be studied, and it should be a part of everybody's studies, and it should be learned with a proper master, at least at first. Definitely should be learned with a proper master who will be able to guide you, who will be able to orient you properly, because there are many, many things in the Kabbalistic teachings, the Zohar specifically, the book of the Zohar, but others as well, where if you misunderstand it, a small deviation over time can cause you to wind up in a very, very different place than what the Torah and the commandments would have you be. So you don't want to lose yourself in the spiritual. You want to keep your feet on the ground. And the way to keep your feet on the ground is to immerse yourself in the practical Torah, not just from the Kabbalistic point of view, but also from the mainstream halacha, rabbinic law point of view, or if you're not Orthodox, rules. You need to have rules. And if you simply start with Kabbalah, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying I can see how it would be very bewildering and dangerous. I'll say dangerous to engage in Kabbalah before you have the proper basis, right? Before you have that practical, physical, material leg to stand on, if you will, of living a life of Torah and commandments. So it's commendable, right, that Mr. Pig wants to convert and be a Kabbalist. I wonder how he's going about it. Observing the Sabbath is a good start. Praying is a very good start. He also says, what does he say? He said, vegetarianism is the future. I'm inclined to agree, right? Being one myself, with a plant-based diet, I do believe it is the future, because it will come full circle, right? Eden was vegan. The future is vegan. You can argue over ways to go about it. You can argue over so many different things, and the logistics of it, and the harm that veganism is doing, and the fact that there are militant vegans, and all that. Taking into account all of that, I also do believe veganism, vegetarianism is the future. Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Kohen Kook, very famously has a kind of essay, right? The vision of peace and vegetarianism, or of vegetarianism and peace. And he asked, how do you see the future of the world? It's miserable for me, and I believe I speak for many. Well, I'm a silly optimist. Even in the midst of this war that's going on, even in the midst of the war that's been raging ever since the state of Israel was established, and all of the horrible persecutions and pogroms and holocausts, plural, that the Hebrew people have been through, I'm a silly, maybe even incautious optimist, because I believe that more than anything it comes down to the individual, meaning me. And we each carry the weight of our own personal, right, life on our shoulders. And I believe that despite my faults, despite my miserable self, I will be able to rise up and truly be who I am meant to be, God willing. And in doing that, I will be doing my share of remedying the future of the world and making it not miserable, right? Because I just want to be less stupid, I want to be less miserable, and I want those around me to also be less miserable. And he says, I believe I speak for many. It's bleak out there, ladies and gentlemen. It's really, really bleak. And I'm sitting here in the comfort of my own home here in Zion, and there are people right now at this very moment who are in Gaza, right, in Gaza, who are the security forces, the IDF, innocent civilians, innocent Gazans who are also being killed because of Hamas. So I can sit here and speak and blah, blah, blah. The point is not to blah, blah, blah. The point is that it comes down to reality, right? To the way I conduct me personally, the way I conduct myself in the world. And it's part of why I'm doing this, right? I want to be held accountable to the degree that I can. And I want to fill my time more with more wisdom, right? And more ways of being better. Right? And acquiring some better traits and becoming who I could be. If only I would get my act together, right? And this is part of what I'm doing here. Let's head back to the chat, see if there's anything else here. BMXers says, what happened to Peace and Coffee's comments in the chat now? I don't know. It was retracted, I see. Retracted, so I don't know. Maybe he decided not to engage? I'm not sure. I don't know. BMXer says, what? Somebody also commented and confirmed what I said about Sanskrit? Well, yes, Mr. Pig in the right, so on Thursday I had like 80 trolls because it was the 4th of July. A lot of people were off, and they had vacation, presumably, maybe. They arrived here for a very short period of time, and they spammed it with Palestine flags and whatnot. Good for them, right? More power to them, whatever. But I missed a lot of questions that were happening in the chat as it was coming in, so I wasn't able to get everything. I wasn't able to address everything. I wasn't able to answer everything. But Mr. Pig did confirm what you said, at least to some degree, about the nature of Sanskrit. And it's interesting because I knew that the different Vedas, right, and right, the Hindu texts, I knew that they were in Sanskrit. I actually did think that it was spoken more, but apparently it also is kind of relegated and reserved for spiritual practices, religious practices, and the different functions of the Hindu faith, right? Make Straight says, what do you think about Isaiah chapter 13 and all the great prophets written about the end when our Messiah is to come? Well, I take that all with a grain of salt, not because the prophecies are wrong. I believe they received those prophecies, but because whenever there is any kind of death, destruction, mayhem, exile, and chaos, it's a prophecy that does not necessarily need to manifest itself. It does not necessarily need to transpire. It doesn't need to happen. If we get our act together, we can turn ourselves and our destinies, our dharma, if you will, right? And shed off those layers, burn off the karma, and be able to not have to go through that suffering, right? You can get there in love, and you can get there in suffering. And so the prophets, in order to warn us, and this is why these specific prophecies were canonized. The prophets, right? There were prophets in every generation, pretty much. Definitely at the time of the temple. And only with the destruction of the second temple did the spirit of prophecy, or maybe the first, but again, it's a difference of opinion there. The prophets spoke that which God spoke through them, right? Revealed to them, and they spoke it. It does not mean it needs to actually happen. What it means is that if you don't get your act together, this is going to happen. Here is the warning. Here is what's going to happen if you don't keep your word, if you don't keep your end of the bargain, right, of your bond, of your pact, your covenant with Adonai, then all of these things will happen. As for Messiah, he can come at this very second if only we will get our act together and anoint him and embrace him, crown him, and give him the throne, if you will, of leadership, the authority. But alas, as I've mentioned in previous live streams, there are several people right now at this very moment in Israel claiming to be Messiah, and they have their own followers, and I'm guessing they are gathering followers, but the proof needs to be in the pudding. The Messiah needs to make a few things happen, if you will, before he is considered to be a potential Messiah, and should he pass the test, right, and carry those things out, rally the people, fight the just war, not necessarily one of bloodshed, right, the just war of regaining the covenant and bringing people back to Torah and commandments. A person who is able to do that, a person who is able to do that is a potential Messiah, no matter what tribe he's from, right? Even if he's not from the house of David, from the tribe of Judah, he can still be crowned, meaning that it all comes down to what are they doing? Because you can claim you're Messiah, but you need to actually carry a few things out in order to be considered an actual, practical, potential Messiah. Then once that happens, you can definitely rally the people, and they will rally around you of their own accord, right? If you make those things happen. I'm just going to take a brief look. Isaiah chapter 13. I'm not going to read any verses. I'm just going to go through it with my eyes very quickly. The JPS version. Okay. So yeah. All the negative things that are written in the prophecies don't need to happen, right? When God makes his appearance through the King Messiah, it can all be with love. It can all be with kindness. It can all be with compassion. It is us, the children of Israel primarily, right, who need to make it happen for us, right? It's the King of Israel, and later you could claim the final Messiah will rally not just the people of Israel, but the entire human race, bring us back to Eden, that whole thing, right? That phase 2 of humanity, as it were. So, I'm sorry, what is it? What? now. Now. What is the meaning of the number 7 to the Jewish people and the world? Well, I go back to Sefer Yetzirah, right, attributed to our patriarch Abraham, our father Abraham. The number 7 represents, first and foremost, right, the 7 continents, 7 seas, 7 deserts, 7 days of the week, 7 years to the Sabbath of the land, 7 times 7, and the 50th being the Jubilee. It all comes together in this groups of 7. The 7 represents the 7 lower revelations of God in the tree of life. This is where, let's say, practical things happen in creation. The top 3 sfirot, the top 3 emanations or revelations of the tree of life are hidden, if you will, and they are assigned, practically speaking, to the body in the right and left hemisphere of the brain, right, inside the skull and under many filters, 3 major ones, but other ones as well, and inside, hidden, right? And the crown, which is kind of the aura, which is outside, represented through something like untouchable, or the hair of the Nazarite, or the oil which the high priest is anointed with, or the a crown which the king wears. So the number 7 is the practical living here in the world. Practical. It's represented in the human body. The top 3 are over here. But the bottom 7 are the hands, the thighs, the genitalia, the tip of the penis, the torso. And so it's something very practical, where this is how we walk, this is how we talk, right? This is how we move around and act in the world, with our hands, with our feet, with our body. As opposed, right, which are all revealed, as opposed to the inside of the mind, right, where the soul, metaphysically speaking, right, or figuratively speaking, is said to dwell. That's hidden. So the lower 7 are where the rubber meets the road, where actual things happen, which is why it's also attributed to the seas, the days of the week, the deserts, and the 7 times 7 leading to the Jubilee. As for what it means to the world, well, I guess I said, right, the seas, the deserts, and there's a lot there. If you look into the Sefer Yetzirah, there are 7 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, Bet Gimel Dalet Kaf Pei Resh Tav, that are twofold, right? There's Bet and Vet, Pei and Fei, Taf and Thaf. And you can say them in 2 ways. It's the twofold idea of reality, because this now is the world of good and evil, of right and wrong, of yin and yang, masculine and feminine, male and female, positive, negative. It's a world of duality, right? Its root is one, but we are living in a world of duality. And the first 3 sfirot, the first 3 revelations, right, with the crown and the 2 hemispheres of the brain, and to some degree that which connects them, right, which is the bridge between 3 and 7, that is all hidden. And the 7 here are things to do with the world, with the practical, physical world. So even though the root is one, here there is a kind of, right, it breaks down into 7, into a duality of right, left, and center, also known as Chesed, Din, and Rachamim, right, which is giving and sort of taking, and the line in the middle of balance, right, like the line in the yin yang symbol, right? It has a serpent in the middle, symbolizing the balance between order and chaos. I hope I answered your question a little bit. You can look into it. It's a ton. You could speak of it, and the Ramak in Pardes Rimonim, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, he speaks of it for many, 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 many chapters on the nature of 7 and what it means here. BMXer says, you say Gaza the same way Arabs do, if I heard correctly. Yes, it's Gaza. That's right. I usually say Azza in Hebrew, or Gaza in Arabic, or Gaza to those who can't do the Reish or the Ain. Robert Harrison, hello, good to see you. Sheva, 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 777. Perfect, 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 or holy, holy, holy. For me, it's Azza, the original name. Yes, Azza is the original name in the book it's the book of Joshua for sure. Next to Ashkelon, it says, if I'm not mistaken. But okay. So yeah, it's Azza with a hard ayin. Robert continues and says, Yod Hei Vav Hei, behold the hand, behold the nail. Right? So he takes it obviously to the Christian side of things, which I don't. But yes, the lower 7 are the 2 last letters, the Vav Hei, and the 3 and the three emanations that are above are the Yod He, right? Where it's the tip of the Yod and the He, that's 3. And the Vav He represent in different ways the lower 7. Robert asks, Yonatan, what's your advice on dealing with difficult people? Well, I take it on a case-by-case basis. That's way too general for me to have any kind of opinion on. So I don't know. You'll have to give me a for instance, right? Give me an example and I would tell you how I would act. But it's a case-by-case basis. General advice, treat others how you would want to be treated, and don't immediately attribute to malevolence what could be attributed to ignorance or stupidity. Look who's back, says BMXer's back again. Tell a friend. I heard recently that Eminem is sort of burying Slim Shady, or maybe he did it years ago, I don't know. And that he won't be, well, I don't know what he will be, but I mean, he came out, right? He broke out as Slim Shady, Eminem and Slim Shady, but I think, right, the first one or the second one was the Slim Shady LP. But I think I saw something on Reddit on how he's no longer going to be Slim Shadying. Correct me if I'm wrong. Robert is in his house, says BMXers. Make Straight asks, who was the last prophets? And are there any now? And what is their prophecy? Well, like I said, according to Orthodox Judaism anyway, since the destruction of the temple, the spirit of prophecy was taken from ordinary men and given to children and fools, and let's say people who are neurodivergent, if you will, to some degree, meaning people who you wouldn't necessarily think of as somebody who is receiving the word of God, right? Children and fools and others who you wouldn't necessarily think that that's the case. Now, I do believe the spirit of prophecy has always remained within the children of Israel. Individuals did receive and always will receive prophecy in their own lives, in their own ways. The question is, what do they do with it? As for a prophet that is designated to speak with the people, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I know that they are definitely out there, but the spirit of prophecy, once again, is hidden. I do believe it's making a comeback, and the Rabbi Nazarite of Jerusalem, Rabbi David Kohen, the priest Nazarite, said that the Nazariteship is a stepping stone to prophecy. I've mentioned this before. I would like, in my lifetime, to achieve prophecy along with the rest of the children of Israel, along with all flesh, as it says in the book of Yoel, that in that time I will pour my spirit upon all flesh. I do believe that's a coming. It depends on us. It depends on me, right? For myself and for others. There's a lot that the individual can do. Right? Again, it's throwing that stone in a pond, and it ripples out, and you have no idea how far those ripples will reach, how strong they will be, or how weak they will be, and what will happen there. Now, are there any now? I say yes. What is their prophecy? I don't know. I don't know what their prophecy is. Much like there are different people right now in the land of Israel claiming to be the King Messiah, waiting to be anointed, there are people who are claiming to be prophets and to receive the word of God. Now, most Orthodox people would dispense and dismiss both of those folks, but I no longer consider myself Orthodox, and B, I don't know. It's such a difficult thing to pin down. On the one hand, you should have faith in people. On the other hand, we know what happened when false prophets and false messiahs permeated through the Hebrew people. We do. We have the history books. We know what happened with people like Shabtai Tzvi. It was appalling. It was very, very, very difficult. And then when Hasidism showed up, it was a train wreck for a very long time until it swept across Israel and currently still does. Okay, let's see. Hello from the other side, says BMXer, is quoting, is it Adele? Adele, yeah. Yes, Muhammad, says BMXers. Right, so the Muslims and others, apparently, believe that Muhammad was the last prophet and that the Quran came down from heaven through the prophet Gabriel, through the angel Gabriel, if I'm not mistaken, and that's the final word of God. Something I personally see as problematic. We have halacha, we have rabbinic law, we have high courts, when we did, right? Who, on the one hand, you have the 5 books of Moses unchanging, and on the other hand, you have the oral law, which is constantly changing. That's part of the beauty. That's part of the beauty of of the Hebrew religion as a religion. I'm not talking necessarily about a faith. I'm not talking necessarily about the spirituality of it. I'm talking about the fact that the courts plural and the high court singular can change oral traditions. Not anymore, right? We're waiting for the high court to be reassembled and reestablished. Like a guy you're doing business with says, okay, so Robert Harrison, how do you deal with a guy who you're doing business with? Again, I'm sorry, that's too vague. It's too vague. I'm of the opinion that you should speak softly and carry a big stick. You shouldn't be a pushover, right? You shouldn't let people take advantage of you, but you shouldn't be so quick to be aggressive. You shouldn't be so quick to anger. You shouldn't burn bridges before they ought to be burned, if they ought to be burned, right? If they should be burned. Business, specifically, is very much a technical issue, right? And many halachas, right, have to do with how do you conduct yourself in business. A lot of laws in the Torah, right, that there should be justice. You shouldn't have two weights, and you shouldn't have two scales. You should not have two measurements, that you should go by this or that. You should have a law that you all follow. You need to be righteous and true and honest in your business, because that's, well, practically speaking, if you're dishonest, people won't do business with you after a short time. They'll figure you out, and then you're done. And also, if you are wanting to live a righteous life, but you conduct business in an awkward and crooked way, and you pervert it, it's a kind of, can you lower it, please? Please? Thank you. It's, you kind of pollute that well that you're drinking from, and you make a perversion in something that ought to be straight. So you should be, I think, in business, you should be forthcoming, right? There is strategy, and there is like the tactics of on the ground business. I don't know too much about business, but so again, it depends on the nature of the circumstances. Robert, I'm sorry I can't be more helpful. BMXer says Muhammad is the last prophet according to Islam, right? Yep, according to them it is. And like I said, might be problematic, might be. My father says hi.
Huh?
Your grandfather says hi.
Hey.
Robert says, the people I'm working for are trying to rip me off. Okay, well then, do you have legal recourse? Can you document things? Document everything you can so it can be incontrovertible, and gather your evidence, and if it's something that you can take them to court, small claims, large claims, this claims, whatever, then, and if you don't want to work with them anymore in the future, then you should gather your evidence, document, be careful, be meticulous, and stand fast. Now, obviously, I don't know your circumstances, but if they're trying to rip you off, you need to know, is this a hill that I want to die on? Because maybe you let them rip you off this one time in order to cultivate a relationship that will last for 50 years, and in a few months you'll be able to say, you know what, we're doing business now for a long time, you ripped me off that time. Or you phrase it differently, obviously, you go the right way about it, and maybe they will agree with you, and maybe if you're in business long term, they will even see the error of their ways and pay you back. You never know what will happen. In the words of Harpo Marx, whistle, whistle, honk, honk. Did you hear, asks Robert, did you hear about the female IDF soldier who warned Israeli government about Hamas, used a verse in Ezekiel saying if the watchmen don't blow the shofar and warn, the blood is on their hand? Well, first, I blow the shofar every new moon, and I did earlier today, and it was lovely. I should do it more often just to get better at it. But yeah, I do it at the new moon. That's actually something I picked up from The Year of Living Biblically by A.J. Jacobs. I haven't mentioned that book in years probably, but it's really a great book by A.J. Jacobs. He decided to go and live as it says in the Bible for an entire year, right? His life is a series of experiments. He has a book called My Life as an Experiment. He has a book called The Know-It-All, where he read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica in a year. He had the Year of Living Constitutionally, where he stuck to the Constitution for an entire year. Fascinating author. I'm sure he's a fascinating person. And it's so yeah, I picked that up because he used to do it. Now, in the time of the temple, there would be 2 silver horns blown by the priests, and the shofar either in the center or on the side, depending on the nature of the day. And in the new moon, it would be the horns in the center, I believe, and they would go longer than the shofar, than the ram's horn. But the ram's horn would also be blown on the new moon, so I decided to pick that up, seeing as how I'm not a priest and I don't have the silver horns. But they were, the two silver horns, incidentally, were constructed by the Temple Institute here in Jerusalem, along with many other sacred garments and artifacts and objects that will be used, God willing, if the temple is erected. They will definitely be used, and they were made for that purpose, with that in mind. And I mentioned Rabbi Yoshua Friedman, author of Nazir Elohim, of the Temple Institute, who took the Nazarite vow a few years ago. I was very lucky to sit with him, speak with him for over an hour, as I've mentioned in the past, and I think it's very, very apt, and what's the word, propitious, right, like of the right time and place, that there would be a Nazarite in the Temple Institute and in their yeshiva. I think it's really wonderful. Right, he's an Orthodox rabbi. I know a few who are Nazarites, thank God. Quoting Groucho, my father says, "The secret of life is honesty and fair dealing. If you can fake that, you've got it made." Oh, Groucho, what would you say now? Robert says, "When's the last time you spoke with Sean Hurwitz?" I spoke to him on Friday. I tried to speak with him and with the rest of my brothers and my parents, for that matter, every eve of the Sabbath before the sun goes down, and with a couple of other people. So I don't always get to speak with them in a dialogue on the phone. Sometimes it's a message, a voice message, a text message. But I try to keep in touch with my fam. I try to keep in touch with my family definitely once a week, if not more. You need to have him on. Well, as you know, Robert, I did have him on for a lovely dialogue, and it was taken away. I still have, for some stupid, silly, absurd reason, I still have faith in somehow reacquiring my old channel, and if not the channel, reacquiring my old videos. I don't know where, I don't know how, I don't know under what circumstances, and 99.99999% that I'm completely wrong, completely mistaken, but for some stupid reason I have not given up on once again getting all those videos back. I'm crazy. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? BMXer says, honesty pays, and sometimes it doesn't. More about that later. Indeed. Indeed. Wait, let's see. Did I miss anything from the chat last time? Probably, but I'm not going to bore you with that. Did I miss anything here? Okay. So now I think we're good. I think I'm actually caught up, basically. I think I'm basically caught up with the comments, at least the comments that I decided to read now. Other comments did come in today and yesterday, and maybe I'll go there. I've been on for almost an hour. This seems a good time to say goodbye, but we'll see. I'll keep going for now. But again, I won't force myself on you good people. You took the time out of your day to be here and engage with me and see me, and you know, and I really deeply appreciate it, and I want to give you, as you know, my everything, 110%. Nothing less will do. When I start feeling tired, I will definitely say goodbye. Maybe this is out, we'll see. Make Straight asks, what does a Nazarite do when they take the vow, or do they fast and pray, etc.? So taking the vow is something that can be done alone. That's how I did it. Some people decide to take it in front of a court, which can be 3 grown men, right? 3 men, 13 and 1 day and above, Jewish. A court of 3, or a minyan, 10 men, 3 or 10 people, or you can do it on your own, because the vow is a personal vow. So it's between you and Adonai, right? Between you and the Most High. So you can do it on your own. That's not a problem. As for fasting and praying, I wouldn't know, because it's never stipulated, if that's the right word to use. It's never mentioned, right, how you should go about it. It's only mentioned, if you are going to go about it, here are the rules. Here are the commandments. Here are the halachas, right, the rabbinic law pertaining to the Nazarite vow. As for how you take it and what surrounds it and the circumstances, it's not exactly clear, and that's the way it ought to be, because it's such a personal and intimate thing. I think it's precisely right that the Torah gave you the commandments, but not the catalyst, right, of when you should be doing this. Now there are some, well, yeah, let's put it the way that there is no reason given in the Torah for why nor how you should take the vow. It simply says, as I've said, if you're going to do it, Here's how you do it. These are the commandments. These are the laws. These are the rules. What happens if you break it? What happens if you fulfill it? And, well, and that's Numbers 6. I'm sure that people fast and pray when they take the vow. I know that with me, the time leading up to it was, well, a lot of prayers and different fasts of different kinds, if you will, right? Of eating and drinking, speaking, whatever the case may be. But when I actually did decide to take the vow, it was rather spontaneous. I wasn't thinking, oh, okay, today's the day, I wrote it in the calendar, today's the day I take my vow. It was rather spontaneous when I did decide to actually mouth the words and mean them in my heart and in my mind, which is how you take on this particular vow, and any vow, really. Robert asks BMXers, why? Too much religion for atheists here. Too much religion for atheists. On that note, on the note of too much religion, it's been an hour and I will say goodbye. Thank you all for joining me, God willing. Tomorrow, 10 p.m. Israel time, join me for another live stream. I thank each and every one of you. I don't take it for granted that I can just sit here and press go live, and here you are, and you're with me, and you're teaching me, I'm learning from you. We're having this beautiful and lovely, enriching dialogue. It's not something that I think it's a wonder. It truly is a wonder to be part of this little community and to have you guys here with me on a daily basis. I don't know if it will stay on a daily basis, but for now it's on a daily basis, right? For the past month, it's been Sunday through Thursday, nearly without fail, and it's been lovely, gorgeous, and I appreciate every single one of you, the subs, the likes, the comments, the chats, whatever it may be. You know, even if you don't say anything, right? Just, oh, Paula is here. Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you, Paula. Right, I might as well read what she said, right? Robert and I are excited. Tuesday, the Messianic praise and worship group Shiloh Ben Hod will be in our area. Right, so they're a musical group, right? If I'm not mistaken, you gave me links to a few of their videos, where obviously lyrically I didn't get into it too much because it all has to do with Yeshua, but musically I could appreciate it, and I could appreciate the fact that they are worshiping through music. As a Levite, you know, obviously I understand how important that is, and the devotion and dedication that these musicians have to bringing the word of God as they see it to their fellow Christians, fellow followers of Yeshua, be they Messianic or otherwise. I think that's a very cool thing to do. Who knows, maybe I'll be able to do the same. When I was back in my yeshiva days, I did compose one or two very short songs based on verses, right, where I just gave the melody on my guitar there. My father says, I thank every one of you. Thank you, 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 right? Steve Martin and Let's Get Small. So, goodbye to you all. Thank you for being here. Good night from Jerusalem. Peace, love, kindness, good vibes. See you tomorrow, God willing, 10 p.m.